Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this video we're probably slightly premature, but I'm always hopeful. So we're going to be making a couple of bits for the 1000 subscriber giveaway which feels like a long way off at the minute, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually. So I thought, well, what better time now just to make something. So I've got it there ready to go, and then when we get to that point I've not got to then scrabble around quickly and make something. So that's what we're going to be doing today. There's going to be one or two bits I think, and I've not really quite fully made my mind up, and when we get to that point I'll be more specific about what there is and how we're going to do it, but certainly for now we're going to crack on and make a couple of bits. So I'll bring you back in at the bench and we'll have a bit of a discussion around what we're going to make in this element. So we're over at the bench and we've got a bit of bar stock. It's just a bit of leftover that I've got kicking around in the shop. So we're talking 30mm by, I think it's 5 maybe, no, 4 probably, 4mm thick, mild steel, black bar, hot rolled. And what we're going to make out of that, and I want one for myself and there'll be 2 for the giveaway, so we're going to section this into 3 pieces, 3 equal pieces, and we're going to make 3 T-slot cleaners for the size of T-slot that my machine has got. So, and we'll work out how best to sort that out, because these are going to be, other than a bit of wall art, they're going to be completely useless unless you've got a machine that's got the same T-slots as this T-slot cleaner is going to be. So we'll figure that one out when we get nearer the time. So what we're going to do is chop this up into 3 equal bits, and I thought, well, what better thing to test the new bandsaw table that I've just made, the new vertical table, so we'll be able to give that a whirl on this bit of steel. So we get it marked out and we'll get it on the bandsaw and see how that goes. Okay, so we've got the bandsaw table. I've done my final bits of setup, so we've checked squareness, and this way I didn't need to tweak it. Back to front I did, so that's all tweaked now. So we're good to go. I do have a bit more tweaking to do, but it'll be good enough for what I'm doing here. So good to go on this. We'll give it a whirl and see how we get on. A couple of bits of feedback I have had, and one of them is two people I think have suggested it, is making something to go in this centre circle for when you're cutting small bits. Fortunately, this plate, being an old fixture plate, has got a big recess on the back. So what I'm going to do is make something that fits into that recess that pokes through here out of just nylon or something like that, with a close fitting slot in it. So that's another future project, but certainly for something that's going to straddle the whole of the hole, you know what I mean, it'll be perfectly good enough. So this is, as I say, a bit of hot rolled. What I've done, this end was cut off with an angle grinder years ago with a cutting disc in. It was dead sharp, so I've just rolled a file around it in Joe Piezinski speak to unsharpen that end just in case it grabs. I've marked out 3 lengths, so we'll get on and give it a shot and see how it performs. There we go. Fantastic. Totally stable. Nice and controllable. Happy with that. We'll get the other 2 saw cuts done and we'll bring you back when we're on to the next part of the manufacture. So I thought it'd just be worth quickly running through how I've cleaned my mill table to date and the tools that I use. So if the slots are really packed up with swarf, I've got this paintbrush that lives on the mill. I use the bottom end of it to try and push the swarf out, and anybody who's done this will know that you need to do that in increments. If you try and push it all from one end, it all packs up and it just won't move. So just to incrementally get rid of that, and then I turn the brush around the other way and brush the slots out each way into the coolant troughs at each end of the table. And then what I have is it's just something I picked up. It's a bit of old hacksaw blade, power hacksaw blade, and I'll just reposition the camera So basically what I do is I've got my milling swarf bucket down there, a black plastic container, and I use this power hacksaw blade to basically come in here, and I just basically scrape the swarf straight out of these end bits into that container. Now the issue with that is, and this would be a 2-minute fix if I could be bothered, but I always knew I was going to make some T-slot cleaners. That's got square corners on it. The corners in here are radiused, so what I want to do is make the T-slot cleaner so on one end of it goes through the T-slot, and on the other end of it it's got the right radiuses on to clean out these coolant trays into the swarf bucket. And it's really that quick. Once you've got that done, got the stuff out of there, scraped into there, then I'll just give it a quick wipe down on the table and we're good to go. So that's roughly what the design's going to look like. So we'll get the vise set up on the mill now, ready for the next bit. Alright guys, we're at the next setup. So I've got the part 3 bits back in the vise. I've just used a ground face block. Where is it? Get in frame, there you go. And I've just set them all up with the edge of the vise, and that'll be my 0 in this instance. I could use my vise stop, but that will only line one of the 3 up, not all 3. So for this, what I'm doing here, it's just as easy to use a block. So we're going to use the DRO, we're going to touch off this edge and call that my 0. And I've got 2 lots of work to do with this. Firstly, I've got to thin both sides of these blocks down to a distance, and then once I've done that we'll sit them higher up in the vise, and then we'll use the same tool off the same datum off this edge to go and put this sort of reverse slot in for the T-slot. And that's why I've got this cutter in. It's a 14mm end mill, and that's the width of the slot that I need to put through. So I've set up with a tool that will do all of the operations. So I'll bring you back when we start cutting. Got one side done, so we'll just turn that round and do the same on the other side. Alright guys, we're on the next setup. So I've got both sides done like that, and the beauty of this sort of setup when you're just coming off the end of the vice jaws is once you've set your 0 on the DRO, I know this is a bit over the top for some T-slot cleaners, but they're special T-slot cleaners, aren't they? So when you've setting up off the edge of the vice like this, once you've set your 0s, you can just keep working to the same 0s all the time. Obviously my Z's changed this time. I'm playing parallel bingo here because I've just not got the right parallels to get to where I need to get to, but we sort of got there by hook and crook. It's not brilliant, but we're ready to go. So we're set up at the right place in X. We've just got to touch off in Z and then machine down 5¼ from this face that I've already machined to put the slot in. So I'll bring you back when we're doing that. Right then guys, that's got the T-slot end done. Got got the radiuses to put on here now. In the interest of making a video, I thought, shall I put the rotary table up on the mill just to show, yeah, it's a T-slot scraper, but at the end of the day it could easily be any project, but there's quite a few rotary table projects on there, so I think for the sake of this, just to try and keep it a bit simple, I'm going to use a radius gauge. So I'm just going to grab a set of radius gauges now. Not everybody might have seen those or used them, so we'll go through that and then we'll measure up the radius of the sort of coolant well at the end of the table, and we'll use that same radius gauge to mark the radiuses on here. So in readiness for that, get my Dicam. This is a really interesting one. I've had this since I started the workshop up last year. I bought it for bluing up, and I've never seen such a small bottle like this. I bought this over the internet and I was fully expecting a brush inside of it, but it hasn't. It's just got this little pad, and it's quite good actually. It's you can just give it a, sometimes on black like this you probably need a couple of coats, but it's, in terms of applying it and not getting it everywhere where you don't want it, it's really quite useful. So I think if I'm ever going to get any more of that, I'm going to get another one of those, because from an application perspective it's quite good. So we'll let that dry, give it another couple of coats, and we'll just go through the radius gauge. So I've got my radius gauge set. So these are a good set. They're more than right. It's a full set of radius gauges. I don't know what they go from, but the biggest is, so they're metric. I think they're single-sided. Yeah, they're just metric. So 13mm as the biggest radius gauge on there, and the smallest is 5.5, I think, is that? Yeah, so the smallest 5.5mm, biggest is 13mm, so it's not a full set, and that's in 0.5mm increments. So from 5.5mm up to 13 in 0.5mm steps. So we'll just go to the mill now and see what radius we need to be using for the end of the T-slot cleaners. So stroke of luck, well, bit of luck I suppose. The biggest radius gauge I've got is 13, and that best I can, it's probably still a bit small if I'm honest. I think the radius is even bigger than that, but that's as close as I need it to be to scrape swarf out. So the idea being the end of the gauge, and I'm not going to really use that end of the gauge, the end of the T-slot scraper will then fit into that corner, as you can see there, and I'm doing this gently so I don't scuff the radius gauge. It'll be able to pick the swarf up that's lying in these corners. So that's the idea behind it. So we'll use that 13mm radius to mark the corners on the back end of the 3 T-slot cleaners. So back at the bench, guys, the whole way these more and right radius gauges are designed, they've got a snap ring to allow you to take off the gauge that you want, like that. And while we're talking about the design of these things, what they're not designed to do is what I'm about to do with this. They're not designed as marking out gauges. They're designed as measurement gauges, really. So with that in mind, I'm going to be sympathetic and just, I'm not going to go round and round and round this many times. Just a gentle scribe on the first one, and then I'm going to use the first one once I've done what I need to do as the template for the other two, just to try and reduce the non-standard use of that, because that's not really what they're designed for, and it's got me frowning, and I'm sure it'll have other people frowning as well. So I'll put that back on its little ring with all the others, and we'll set about getting this first one down to size. That's a bit warm. Well, that'll do for the first one, roughing out to those lines, and we'll just finish that off with a bit of draw filing when that's cooled down. There we go. Check that again. And that's pretty good. So I'll do the rest like that. I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me draw file another 5 of those. So we'll get all of them up to that standard. We'll break edge them. One other thing that I've done that I didn't show is I've just put a centre dot. So I mark these out, and we've got a centre punch mark. Is that going to focus? Where are we? There we go. I've just put a centre punch mark on each one of these, and we're going to drill a hole for hanging this thing up. And I've made that centre of these two radii, so it looks like it's in the right place. So I'll bring you back once we've got all the filing done and the radiusing, and we're popping the holes in. Right then guys, a couple of these, 2 of them that'll be for the giveaway. I've just got the flat wheel on the angle grinder and just basically taken the mill scale off really. I was thinking about surface grinding them, but I think you can probably put slightly too much work into something, and so I think that's good enough, because what I want to do is chemically black these when I'm finished. So you'll see one's not been done, that one's mine. I'm not bothering for my own one, it'll just stay as black bar. I've got my stamp set out, so that's the next challenge, and I'll move you to my setup, and we're going to just try and stamp them up with John's Workshop, and I don't know, 1,000 subs or something like that. Anyway, we'll just put something on them just to make them a bit special, just on 2 of them. Obviously on my one I'll be leaving that just as it is. So I'll just move you to the stamping setup that I've got. So you can see here we've got a big solid lump of steel right over the top of one of the pillars of the bench, so it's well supported, and we've got one of the T-slot cleaners clamped in underneath a parallel, well it's not a parallel, it's just an old piece of bar, but it's parallel, and we're going to use that as a rest to rest our stamps up against. So we're just going to work our way along, so at least they'll be in a nice straight line, even if they're not all the right way up or a bit skew iffy, but we'll give it a go and see how we get on. Well, there we go guys, that's got those done. The second one slightly not as good as the first. I had a bit of a clamp move halfway through, but yeah, not too bad really. So next job, we're going to get those degreased and into the chemical black, and again I've shown lots of that in previous videos, so I'll not film that, but I'll show you the end result when they come out. So then guys, $1 million question, do they fit? Second $1 million question, do they work? So while the other 2 are in the chemical black, I just thought we'd give this a try. Bit late now if it didn't fit, wouldn't it? I had tried it previously. So this is my one, so I can't believe I'm about to do this. But here's a pan full of swarf, and I'm about to chuck it all all over the milling machine. So we'll make sure that's well and truly packed in there. I think that'll do. Just get the paintbrush out and make it a bit sort of how it would normally be, where you'd brush the top down, something like that, and we'll give it a shot. So first test, very good. Second test, does it do what I wanted it to do from the radius perspective for cleaning out? And the answer is yes, it does. So it's getting into those corners. So yeah, happy with that. That's pretty good. I'll just show you that T-slot in a bit closer. Oops, that's further away. So yeah, you get the odd bits left behind, but largely that's taken all of that swarf out to the point where what I would then do, just a quick brush with a brush, and that's all it needs. I have got a compressor, but I'm not a big fan of airlines on machines, having seen over the years the damage caused by ingress of swarf and coolant into places where you really don't want swarf and coolant getting in as a result of using airlines on machines. So that's why you never really see me using an airline. I'll always manually try and clean things down. So yeah, pleased with that. All fits, all works, does the job. So I'll bring you back when we get the other two out the chemical black. There we go then guys, that's the finished article as they will be given away. Well, two of them. Obviously they don't look that much different now I've blacked them. Feels like a lot of work, but they do when you look close. That's obviously quite rough, that one, but that's fine for me. But those will be the two that I give away. Got a nice finish on them with the stamping. Still a bit wet from the oil just now, and I'm going to leave them that way to let that soak in. Following the blacking process, and we'll give them a final wipe over before we parcel them up. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Or 1,000 of you hopefully by the point we get to when we're talking about giving these away. As I said, I think I might be slightly premature, but we'll see where we get to, and we will catch you all very soon in another video when we'll be making something else.